You're now listening to the God Friend of Me podcast. Today we got a very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, Coach Paul, Pastor Paul, Apostle Paul. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and let him introduce himself. We're going to go ahead and get into his testimony.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So again, I'm just so thankful for being on this podcast and being able to share my story. My story is pretty similar to a lot of people's story as far as the drug addiction, maybe a broken home, just a lifestyle, was raised around musicians, was raised around my stepfather, all of those different areas. But when I was born, I was literally in the womb abandoned by my real father. And so there was these abandonment issues that were going on inside my spirit throughout my life. Even though I had that stepfather, after about 8 years of age, he just flipped like a light switch, a whole different person.
Like in a good way or a bad way?
In a bad way, totally bad way. Just went from being like the perfect father. I mean, he had cars, we would go fishing, we'd go camping, we'd go hunting, we'd go and just do all those things that boys need from a father. And then all of a sudden, from one day to the next, like a snap of the finger, he just turned into this dark person that was narcissistic, abusive, molesting my sister, abusing my mom, emotionally, physically, mentally abusing me. Just all these different ailments that were going on that brought me and the rest of my siblings into this place of confusion. Like, was it our fault? What did we do wrong? And that's how the enemy works. And so through that, just going through life and just trying to figure this thing out, I was angry, I was bitter, rejected, all of those things, and soon became, by 12, 13 years of age, started smoking weed. And stayed on smoking weed from 12 to almost 24, 25 years old. I never got into the uppers, never did any of that. But I got to a point where I was hustling dope by age of 18, 19 years old, started, pushing weight, started messing with the methamphetamines, never dabbled in it. I just cooked it, re-rocked it, did all of that, all of the stuff that we do out in the streets. Until that one day where I was in this new circle of people, and they wanted to find out, are you a narc? And so I did some, didn't faze me. The next 2 or 3 weeks just went by. It was like, whatever. I mean, it didn't do nothing for me. And then came New Year's. And so I did it. I can't even remember which year it was, but it was probably 1995, somewhere around there. And so I did it for New Year's, woke up the next day, kept doing it. And after the third day, that was it. I was hooked.
It was over.
It was over. Just couldn't stop. I had cars, I had self-respect, I had respect in the streets, I had respect in our circles. Just the whole lifestyle of a hustler, of the gangbanger, of the guy that's running things.
Working your way up on the streets.
Working my way up, brother. And so through that, I lost everything. I lost my cars. I lost my friendships. I lost everything, absolutely everything, and just went down this spiral of events for, 95, for 6 years, just off and on, doing dope, trying to figure this thing out, trying to get off dope. Would go clean 6 months, get back on. There was one time when I went clean, I think like a year and a half, jumped back on it, and I just couldn't find a way away from it. And I knew, and it's so crazy because I knew as a young child that I wasn't going to die in California. And I used to tell my mom, at some point, I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be in another state. I don't know where, but I'm not going to die in California. So it was almost like I was prophesying over myself without even knowing it. And so that day came after 9/11 hit. I was, still strung out, living in this small little town in California, trying to get away from the big city, trying to get away from the people. But just because of the way that I'm connected with certain people, I couldn't run from anybody. I mean, and it wasn't like I was running from people for money or nothing like that. That was one thing that I always kept clean, was my name, as far as money, debts, running from people. But it was basically whoever I met was like, well, don't you know so-and-so? And I'm like, oh man, yep, I know so-and-so. Okay, cool, let's go party. So it was just easy. No matter where I went in Northern California, I knew somebody who knew somebody. And so I just got to a point where I'm like, man, there's got to be a way out. There's literally got to be a way out. And I was on this 3-day binge, and I was literally, my job was a paper route, and I was 28 years old, and I'm like, what am I doing? No shade on a paper route, but at the same time, when you're 28 years old, you ought to have some kind of career, some type of some type of trade, degree, whatever. But I was just down and out, and I finally got to a point, because I was raised Jehovah's Witness, so there was a whole lot of religion there. I knew that there was a God, but I didn't believe in Christ because we were taught that he was equivalent to the Archangel Gabriel. So we had no connection to salvation. We had no connection. It was just law, principles. And so, coming back to that moment, I prayed and I said, I don't know who you are, Jehovah, whoever you are, whatever you are. I'm praying to you because I need purpose. I need something in my life that's better than where I'm at. And I opened up that newspaper and saw this ad right smack dab in the middle of that newspaper, and it said, travel the country for free, get paid daily, start today. And for me, dude, that was my way out, bro. I was like, this is it. And so I literally had, I think like 30 or 40 bucks in my pocket, and I went to Walmart, got some jeans, got some cheap shoes. And back then, I mean, you could spend 40, 50 bucks and come out of Walmart with a wardrobe. Yeah. And so, got suited and booted, got ready, called this company. They say, you know what, we have this bus ticket waiting for you. You're going to head out to San Francisco from Merced, California. I'm like, all right, cool. Joined this sales crew. And that's where the journey really began. Because for a whole year, probably about 8 months, I was clean and sober. I was on the sales crew. We were going state to state, city to city, door-to-door sales, selling cleaner, little spray bottle with the towel. And just, for me, it was like, excuse me, it was like I could be somebody who I've never been, and I can also be something other than what other people told me that I needed to be.
Oh, that's good, man.
Felt what others were thinking about me. Because let's face it, you and I both know, when you're in the streets, there's a certain criteria that has to take place. When you're doing certain things, you've got to live up to the certain standard.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was in this game, right? And I'm like, you know what? I'm not around my homeboys. I'm not around my family. I'm not around any of this. I can be whoever the heck I want to be. And so when I would travel, excuse me.
Yep.
When I would travel, I would, that's when I really started to learn who I was. And this is way before I knew about Christ, about kingdom, about, identity, about any of that. I was like, man, I'm a totally different person. This is not who I used to be. And so right when we got about Chicago, one of the guys on crew went and got some Coke. And so I was up for I think 2 days, but I was so mad because I'm like, what am I doing, dude? I literally never did cocaine before. It was methamphetamines. And I'm like, I never liked Coke. Why am I even doing this? And I was so mad at myself that I just locked myself in my hotel room and just vegged it out, just sweat it out, drank it out, did all of that, woke up the next day that's not my lifestyle. And so when we got up to upstate New York, it was time to start heading back to the West Coast. And I got scared. I mean, literally got scared because I'm like, man, if I go back, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
Because at least here, I get paid daily. I get a motel room for free. I can run a crew. all of that. But if I go back home, this lifestyle is just here. So I would need an apartment, a good job. I would have to start from zero all over again. Well, the girl that was my manager, she was from Ohio, and she was married. She had a little girl, and so her plan was, I'm gonna jump off crew. I'm gonna go back home. If you want to come with me, try it out for a year, because she knew my past, all that. I'm like, dude, I can't go back home, because if I go back to Cali, it's a wrap.
Yeah.
It's a wrap. I'm gonna be back in the same old thing, and that was a whole year. So in that, we ended up in Ohio, in this small country bumpkin town called New Philadelphia. I'm talking small, like there's nothing there. Just a Walmart, maybe a few restaurants, a nightclub, and that was it. And so we went, got off crew, sold maybe $1,000 worth of product just to get a hotel room for her, one for me. She had a baby, all of that. Her marriage was rocky, so she never went back to her husband. So now I'm in this place of, okay, I've got to help this woman out to get her on her feet, because she's helped me out for a whole year. And so we joined this telemarketing company, and man, I just blew that thing out the water. Like it was so easy for me, because I had just got off of the road from selling cleaner, door to door, school of hard knocks. So telemarketing for me was nothing, and literally just blew that out the water. Made close to $32,000 within 3 months time.
Wow.
Of just straight commission. I mean, I was working 8 hours a day, but I was popping like hard, to where all of my leaders are like, no one listened to his calls. He's bringing all the sales up. Don't worry about
focus
him.
on everybody else. Yep.
Right. And so everything began to come to pass. Like finally got my license, got a car, got, everything in order. Everything worked together. Everything was going great. And so I was still in this place of undecided. Like, okay, I'm here, I'm clean, I've got an apartment, I've got money, I've got all of this stuff. But now what? Like, I'm still angry, I'm still bitter, I'm still afraid to create relationships. I don't have a girlfriend. Like, where am I at? I'm 30 years old and I have none of these things. And so through that, a lot of prayer, a lot of the journey came into fruition. And then I became one of the bosses at the telemarketing place. And I also had this part-time job at this welding place, because I was just hungry for money because of the lifestyle that I had just left.
Yeah.
It was all about money. It was all about status. So I was just grinding, which is fine. But at the same time, I just had no purpose. And so when I became one of the bosses, a young girl came in. I was 30 years old, 29, 30, and she was 21. And she was married to this guy that was like 40 something years old. It was this arranged marriage. She wasn't happy. And I had just met her, and our eyes just locked. Like the minute that I saw her and she saw me, our eyes locked. And I already knew, I'm gonna get with this girl. Like within 5 minutes, it was like, I'm gonna get with this girl. Cause I was that sleazy salesman. I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to do all of that. And so within the next 2 or 3 days, boom, got her number, hooked up with her, found out she was married. We started having an affair. And then at some point, and grant you, she was a Christian, but I didn't know until we were like in the sin. And one day she's like, I got to stop doing this. And I'm like, well, this is God's will. I said, because if it wasn't God's will, we would have never met. And when I said that, everything, no lie, I felt this darkness come over me. I felt this bondage come over me. I felt this condemnation come over me. Everything changed. Everything turned dark. Within 24 hours, my whole attitude changed. I never saw her ever again. The stuff at work, it was this torment. It was the torment. And And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And my whole life changed within that time for about 2 or 3 months, where I was starting to spiral down. I wasn't doing dope. I was smoking weed, but to me back then that wasn't methamphetamines. I was still smoking a little bit, still drinking, going to clubs, getting into fights, and that was not my nature. I finally got to a place where I got kicked out of the apartment that I was living in because I was growing weed. So they found out, they kicked me out. Went and stayed with a friend of mine, and this trailer that he was staying in was rat infested. I'm talking totally rat infested. And I didn't have a bed, I didn't have anything. I literally would lay on the floor on a futon, curled up in a blanket from head to toe, so that I didn't get any diseases or anything.
Yeah.
But through that time, I would wake up and I would be tripping, because around me there was like this border of rat poop, mess, stuff chewed up, but never on my bed. And so one day I'm like going to work, and I was tired of that job. Not that it didn't pay me enough, but I just didn't have enough hours, because I had left the telemarketing place and I was just working for the welding place, and I was only getting like 30 hours each week. And so I'm like, man, so again, I sat in that place and I said, you know what? Whoever you are, God, if you could just give me a job. I don't need more money. I just need more hours. I need stability, because I got to get out of this place. It was a Saturday morning. Well, that same Saturday, I went to work, started working on one of the customers' the forklifts and his tow truck and stuff, and just was grinding some stuff. And me and him locked eyes, but it was this weird connection. Like, I knew that for some reason I was connected to this guy, but I didn't know why. Grant you, I wasn't saved. I didn't believe in spirituality, none of that stuff. But for some reason, I'm like, man, there's some reason that I just keep staring at this guy. So he left. My boss knew that I was wanting more hours. He's like, hey, Oliver's hiring. I said, who's Oliver? He's like, the guy that you were working on his tow motor and stuff. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, where does he work? And he's like, he's got his own company. So I said, all right, got the information, went down there, walked in there. He looks at me, he's like, hey, what's up? I mean, he was 68 years old. And we just started talking about life. And after about an hour of talking, he's like, so what are you here for again? I said, I need a job. And he's like, okay. He's like, all right, today's Saturday. He said, come by Wednesday and I have a job for you. I'm like, all right, cool. He said, but here's what I need. I said, what's that? He said, I need somebody to help me run this company.
Oh,
and I'm like sitting there going, dude, you don't even know me. Like, you don't know me from Adam. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, and I need somebody to walk beside me and blah, 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 blah. So, all right, cool, for sure. So I went home, went to my other job, quit them, came and talked to him, talked to his daughter, alone, her and her husband. It was on a Wednesday evening. I showed up and she's just kind of like eyeballing me up and down. She's looking at me and she's like, are you Paul? And I'm like, yep. And she's like, the first question that she asked me was, are you cocky? And I said, if you mean confident, yeah, I'm pretty cocky. And she's like, okay. She's like, what's your biggest weakness? I said, my biggest weakness is that when somebody tells me that I can't do something, I show them up every single time. And she's like, okay. I said, but it can also be my strength. She said, all right, okay. She's like, would you ever hit my dad? And I'm like, why would I hit your dad? I'm like, no, what? I mean, no, I'm not gonna hit your dad. I said, he's an old dude. She's like, okay, I'm just saying, because my dad, what you met, is not what you're gonna be working with. He's a totally different guy. She said, and I am not saying any of that to talk bad about my dad, because anything that I'm saying here, I will say it in front of him. He's a diabetic. He's very, very driven. He's the old school.
Mm-hmm.
He was raised poor, but he has built this legacy, and he just don't put up with garbage. I said, okay. I said, well, since we're being straight and we're being frank about everything, I said, I just want you guys to know that I used to be addicted to methamphetamines. I still smoke a little bit of weed. I drink on occasion, and that's who I am. I said, but I am clean. She said, all right. She goes, okay. And so she said, all right, we'll show up tomorrow. I said, cool, not a problem. So I showed up the next day, and me and him start working together. And I literally walked beside this man for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Learning the business. Within a year's time, I was a supervisor. I had keys to all of their houses, to their offices, to everything, like absolutely everything. And I was there for the first 2 or 3 months. And then he invited me to a men's breakfast. I knew that he went to church, but I just didn't know what it was all about. And so he was from Pentecostal church. And so he invited me to this men's breakfast, the first one. And so for me to be safe about it, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna bring one of my friends with me. So in case it doesn't work out the way I want it to work out, we're gone. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, let's roll. So we went to this huge convention. Some football player from the Cleveland Browns was talking or something. Mm-hmm. And I don't even remember. All I remember was when I walked in, they're doing worship, all these older guys and younger guys with their hands raised and this and that. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Let's
dude?
roll.
Like,
let's roll. No.
Yeah, I'm like, man, you gotta miss me with this stuff. Yeah. So my friends like, man, let's we're here. Let's check it out. I'm like, all right, cool. So after praise and worship, I see everybody hugging each other. I'm like, man, what kind of place is this, dude? Like, we don't do that, man. I'm from Cali, homie. Like this, we don't do that stuff.
We shoot at each other.
And right, exactly. And so I'm sitting there going, all right. So after breakfast, we leave. I bone out. I see him the next day, and he's like, hey, what'd you think about the breakfast? I said, man, that was kind of gay, bro. I said, to be honest with you, man, I said that just ain't me, dude. Because my whole perspective back then was just a whole different person. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, man, that's not what I do, bro.
Yeah.
And so then the following week, he's like, there's another breakfast that I want you to go to. He said, but this one's going to be smaller. It's going to be more intimate. I was like, intimate? Now, like, he's using like all these Christian. Yeah, I thought the last one was a little funny, bro. But I'm sitting there going like, what in the world? So I'm like, intimate. I was like, man, you're telling me all the wrong words, bro. And so he starts laughing. He goes, hey, just show up. That's all I'm asking. Just show up for this last breakfast. I'm like, all right, cool. That Saturday morning, everything on the face of the planet fought me to get there. Everything. My car wouldn't start. Accident on the freeway because I had lived probably 45 minutes from the shop. And so I'm like, man, and I'm trying to get there. He's calling me. I didn't answer it because I already knew what he was going to be like. Hey, where are you at? And so I waited till like the last 2 or 3 intersections from the job. When he called me, I said, hey, he goes, where are you at? I said, I'm like three exits up. I said, there was a lot of struggle. He's like, well, hurry up and get here. I said, all right, cool. Pull up, jump in his truck. We head down to the Marriott. And we went, they had the little chef cooking omelets and a smaller crowd, maybe 10 or 15 men. And so I'm like, okay, this is more like it. And I had already known 2 to 3 of the men that were there because they were all part of the same church and they would come and visit him at his business, or we would go to their house for breakfast and stuff. So for me, I was like, okay, I know some of these cats. I feel more comfortable. Yeah. So we're sitting there and I'm just kind of talking with everybody. And so I asked one of the pastors there, I'm like, hey, what time is church tomorrow? So the next Sunday, I get dressed up, drive down to the church. I walk in, I tap him on the shoulder, and he looks at me. He's like, hey, what are you doing here? And I said, well, that's not a way to greet people. Like that's not how you invite people to church, bro. And so I sat with them and never stopped going.
Oh man.
And so So that was March of 2004, April, because that was right about Easter.
Mm-hmm.
So it was right about April. But from April to January 9th of the following year, I went to church, but I never gave my heart to the Lord. I never knew what that was. I never knew what that meant. And so through that, because it was this Pentecostal church, part of me sometimes was like, man, this is a little too radical for me, man. You got people like falling on the floor. You got like all kinds of weird stuff. But the Holy Spirit kept me there because I just knew there's something different about this place. So anyway, long story short, I'm in a place right before January 9th where I'm frustrated. I'm looking at my life going, I'm going to church, but I don't see no change. I don't see nothing internally changing. Nothing's changing. I'm in this foreign place. I have no family here. The people that have taken me in are like family, but they're not my blood. Like, what am I doing here? And so it was to the point where I literally, when I tell this story, I always tell people I didn't get saved at a church. I got saved on my couch. The church was the seed that was planted in me to understand who God was, but my salvation didn't come but on my couch that Sunday morning. This was January 9th of 2005. I literally cried out and I said, Lord, help me. I don't know what to do. I'm tired of carrying these burdens of life. I'm not doping. I drink a few beers here and there, but I'm not doing anything crazy, but there's still nothing internally changing. I need you to break me loose and shake me loose of all of these chains. I jump in my car. I'm still crying. I'm driving to church. I said, I don't understand what an altar call is, but I'm going to be the first one to. And sure enough, dude, I got to that church and this girl that was singing, she was literally diagnosed with cancer.
Oh,
That it was pretty much, she was already on her way out. Right. But something prompted her the week before to sing a song with the same title of the prayer that I said, Shake Yourself Loose. So here's how I know God is real. Because the same prayer that I prayed was the same song that she was praying when I got to that church.
wow.
The same exact song. I think the artist is I forget her first name, but the title of the song is Shake Yourself Loose.
Wow. That's amazing, man. It's almost like that lady with cancer, she was probably praying and so in tune with God. He probably put it on her heart and already knew your prayer. And
Absolutely.
It's just boom. That's beautiful,
Absolutely.
man. That's beautiful.
Yeah, man. So when I get there, I'm literally hearing her sing the same exact song that my prayer was. And I was like, wow. I walked into the church and I literally saw the hand of God sweep through the church. People were just falling out, slain in the spirit. People were praying in tongues, all this stuff going on. All the stuff that I was always leery about, the Lord just kept showing me, just walk to the altar. Don't look at the people. Don't worry about what's going on. This is about you and me. And I literally went to that altar. And prior to that, weeks before that, up until that day, me and Oliver, my boss, were always fighting. Every day was a constant fight.
Wow.
Fight. But when I got to that altar, I stood up there for 30 to 45 minutes. Nobody came to pray for me but him. He came up behind me, lifted my hands up, held them up. As I was worshiping, as I was crying, I was just releasing. And I literally felt the hand of God, like literally saw it, where God's hand was extracting all of my curses from my spirit. He was removing all the anger, all the guilt, all the shame, all the addiction, all of the stuff, all the dark stuff. And when I turned around, I see him and I just start bawling. And from that day forward, our friendship was so solid because we knew at that moment, now we know why we're always fighting. Now we know why God put us together. Now we know. And from that moment forward, everything else was history as far as all the stuff. Now it was up to me to literally walk it out. And so there's so much more to like talk about. Maybe we could do like a part 2.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's where literally my walk started with God, was at that moment when I finally surrendered and I said, all right, show me how to live. And that's where all of those life skills that are part of my book started to come into fruition, about, always be networking, always stay in touch with God. Chapter 1 is you're powerless. Like, you're literally powerless. And that's what I want people to know, that without God, we're totally powerless. And so that's where all of these tips began to originate from the book. When I started writing it, somebody asked me a few months ago, it only took you like 3 months to write that book. I said, nope, it's taken me 48 years.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like,
Experience.
that's 40. Yes. I said, that's 48 years of experience of all my failures, my wins, my undecidedness, my doubt, my fear, all of that. That's 48 years of all of that. I said, so what you saw me do in 3 months was really 48 years of what God was doing in my life. And so, through that, I mean, there's just so much more. There's like the backsliding stage that I went through, all of that. But for the last 10 to 12 years, I've just been in ministry, worked on staff at a church down in Dallas, Texas. Started my ministry Set Free, and now it's transformed into life coaching, helping people one-on-one, helping people in like group situations, circumstances, atmospheres, and just setting people free, man. Just helping them walk through this thing called life, and just letting them know, listen, you can't do this by yourself. We all need somebody, but most importantly, without Christ, we're nothing. And so that's pretty much like the gist of where the book came from, was from all of that understanding that all of these applications of the word are imperative, because we have to move past just, I'm going to pray for you. Okay, cool. Pray for me. But can you show me how to apply the prayer?
Yeah.
That's where so much of the disconnect in the kingdom is disconnected, because it's like, well, just pray for me. Okay, no. Pray for me. That's number one. But at the same time, show me how to apply that prayer. Like, show me what you did for you to get to this place. And so
That's the thing I love.
Of,
That's the thing I love about your book, is it's a pretty much a game plan for your life. You don't just read something and have to try to figure it out. You kind of read it, it gives you examples of kind of what you have done or where you're coming from with it. Then also allows you to come up with a game plan for yourself right afterwards. So it's like, all right, you read something, but let's put it into practical, application on the other side. How can this, what's your game plan for it? And you walk them through that. And I really believe if you make it through this whole book and you read these things and you actually come up with the game plan and go back through it and look at what your game plan is, I think this could make huge changes in your life, because I feel like a lot of times people get stuck at certain points. Maybe it's at the beginning, maybe it's at the end, maybe they're doing really good like you were, but it's like, all right, what's now? What's next? What's going on? Like, how do I get to the next level or take this thing? Or, I can't just be stuck here. I'm not where I was, which is good, but I'm still not where I need to be or want to be. So I like your book, because it really just kind of walks you through there, and then gives you real practical tips. Sometimes you read stuff and it's like, yeah, that's great, but that's not my life. That's somebody else's life for sure. And this is more practical, real life, applications of what you could put into your everyday practice.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that was one of the things that that when I was writing the book, I was like, you know what? I want to do these tips, but then also have some type of a journal for the reader to have that game plan for themselves. Because what I've learned in 12-step programs, recovery coaching, life coaching, all of those different aspects, is that, listen, we both may like pancakes, but you may like blueberry pancakes. Mm-hmm. You may like the butter on your pancake versus the butter on the side. Or you may like the eggs on the side where I like the egg on top. So it's all the same form, but whatever's going to work for you, my job as your coach, as your counselor, as your friend, is to hold you accountable to what you say is going to work. And so that's what the book is. Here's the life tip. Here's what I learned. But now create that game plan for yourself, because Out of every tip, I believe this, and I say it boldly and confident. Out of every tip, you ought to be able to find one small nugget for yourself.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's the same with life. That's the same with life. Whatever's working for Jacob, for Jake, I could take one thing to say, you know what? There's a lot of stuff that Jake said that is true, or that doesn't fit my life, but there's one thing that he said, you know what? I am going to try that and see if it works. And so that's what the whole concept of the book is to read that portion, and it's an easy read. It's like one page on one side and then the game plan.
Yep.
And so, yeah, man.
I love it, man, because a lot of people, or a lot of reads you do, I mean, you're reading it, you don't know at what point to kind of start to try to comprehend it. Sometimes you try to read the whole book and then try to absorb it or comprehend what you've been reading and the meaning of it. The thing I like about this, it's almost like read a page and then let's break it down real quick. Let's not wait to try to dissect it or tear it apart or see what it really means. Let's get to the meat and potatoes right now. Let's not just try to wait till the end and then all you're really going to remember is the last part that you probably read. Let's keep doing that, because if you read it and then you start writing it down, you remember it better. Now it probably has a better chance of being successful and becoming a different type of habit or a different pattern that you're trying to create too. So I love it, man.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
So if people want to get the book, where's the best place for them to check you out at?
They can go to Amazon.com, Amazon app, and just do a search for 100 power tips to set you free. Or they can even reach out to me, recoverycoach@setfreelife.net, if they want a signed copy, and then I will send it from the batch that I have. And I've got a new book coming out next year. It'll probably drop right about July. I'm not sure what the title is going to be yet, but I'm going to drop one more that is going to pertain to the end of the book. The whole last 21 days is basically 21 days boot camp of endurance, perseverance, and consistency. And so what I'm going to do is basically take that portion and then break that down for another book that's going to go a little bit deeper. So they can go to Amazon, do a search, 100 power tips to set you free. You can also find my podcast where I actually do audios from the book and then expound even deeper. And they can find that on any one of their favorite podcast platforms. So,
and what's the name of the podcast? It's the same thing.
100 power tip. Yep. Same title.
Love it, man. I love it. Yeah, definitely have to check you out. So Amazon, direct to Paul, or go ahead and shoot some emails and get that signed copy. That's what I did. So I definitely appreciate you today, man. The powerful story, powerful message, man. Definitely going to help a lot of people. Look forward to the part 2 of this, and have a wonderful day, man. Awesome. We look forward to it.